Hi, this is Rachel from Sew Behind, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the t-shirt quilts. I've been getting a lot of questions lately, which I think is great, so thank you. Keep sending in your t-shirts. We'll keep making your quilts. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the t-shirt quilt and what goes into the t-shirt quilt. So a lot of times I get questions asking about size, and as you can see here, this is a 12 t-shirt layout. It's 3 blocks across by 4 blocks down. And this quilt comes out to about 60 by 79 inches. Now, I say about because this is part of some of the questions that people ask is in regards to size. And we base our block size on a 16-inch block. So we want to try to get the most out of your t-shirt because we know that you love your t-shirts and you want to be able to wrap up in them. So our block is based on a 16-inch size. If your shirts are a little bit smaller than that, then the block obviously will be slightly smaller than the 16 inches. And so we try to get the most out of your t-shirt or your sweatshirt or the shirt that you're sending in. So you can see here that every block is sashed. This is the fabric that goes in between, and you can see on this quilt, it's a little bit difficult with the dark t-shirts, but you can see here it's the piece of fabric that goes between the orange block and the orange block on the bottom. So that is what is referred to as a sashing piece. The orange blocks are known as cornerstones, and these can be added to your quilt. They're just a different color that sort of offsets the sashing that's in between the t-shirt. I also want to point out that on this particular quilt, this 3 by 4 layout or 12 t-shirts, you can see it here on, I have this on a full-size bed, or a double it's commonly referred to as. And it pretty much just lays right across the top. I'll kind of pan around here a little bit so you can see this quilt. So you can see that this makes a pretty large lap-size quilt is sort of what I refer to it as. It's not going to hang over tremendously on the sides of your bed. Now, if you have a twin-size bed, this might be a nice quilt for a twin-size bed. But this is a really great quilt if you just need something to wrap up on your couch on those chilly winter nights. At least here in Ohio, it gets pretty chilly. Or you just, you want a keepsake and you don't want to use all your t-shirts, but you have 12 favorites that you really want to put into a quilt or made for a loved one. So this is a little bit about the quilt and the sizing and the t-shirt size that we use from, the block size that we use from your t-shirts. So hopefully this explains a little bit about what's happening. Now, I'm going to kind of zoom in here a little bit. You can see the quilting or the swirls all over this particular block. That's the quilting. The pattern I use is called Turbulence. It's probably one of my favorite quilt patterns because it gives you a lot of coverage, but it doesn't really take away from your shirt. You can see here that pretty much you can read the whole shirt. You can see the graphic. It's not going to interfere in any way with the t-shirt emblem itself. And so I like this pattern because it isn't too dense, but it very much covers all of your quilt. The thing to keep in mind with quilting is that the further you quilt apart, the more space that is left open can lead to what is commonly referred to in the quilt industry as shredding. So what happens is lots of t-shirt quilt makers will use a really high loft polyester batting, and then they quilt really far apart. Or maybe they even only just tie the quilt in the corners, meaning that they take some thread, let me get a close-up here, and on this square they would take some thread, and right here in each of these corners they would go ahead and they would tie some threads in here, and that's what would hold your quilt together. However, all of the material that is in between these cornerstone pieces wouldn't have any quilting to it. So this means that none of these pieces of t-shirt are connected in any way to the backing or the backside of the quilt, and what you get is when you go to wash it, you can end up with a lot of shredding and a lot of bunching of your batting, and that's the filler used on the inside of the quilt. Now at Sew Behind, we only use Quilter's Dream polyester batting. It provides the best drape, which is how the quilt lays. It's not going to be stiff. It's going to be really flexible and cuddly when you get your quilt. So you can see here it folds up nicely. And a lot of times people think of quilts as comforters, and comforters are those really thick bedding pieces that you often see at the store. But what happens is over time they kind of break down because they have really loose quilting throughout that comforter. And so we use a polyester batting that provides a lot of warmth. I use it in all my own personal quilts, the quilts on my bed here at home, and all of the quilts that I do for customers. It washes nice, it quilts very well, and it holds up over time, which is really important because when you have these kind of keepsakes, you don't want to lose the keepsake because the middle part of your quilt is falling apart. And so these are just some things to keep in mind. I think this is what helps us at Sew Behind be a really good t-shirt quilter. We pay attention to the details, and we pride ourselves on making a really quality product. So hopefully this has answered some of your questions about sizing, about the materials used. All the materials used on your quilt are 100% quilt shop grade, meaning that they're the first run of material and that they have the best thread count, and they have the best coloring. And you're not going to get a lot of shrinkage with the materials. They're not going to wear out really quickly. They're going to last for a really long time. So hopefully this has answered some questions for you. And if you have any more questions, you can feel free to go to the website at www.sewbehind.com, and there's an email link on the home page, and you can click and email me, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions that you have. So please make sure you send us those t-shirts. I know graduation is coming, and it's a pretty busy time. So I look forward to getting your keepsakes and making you a one-of-a-kind quilt. Thank you.